So this is a mastermind all about winning the offer. So we all know it's been a pretty crazy buyer's market, well, seller's market, so tough for buyers for a while now. So we had some requests for kind of, talking about some strategies, talking about the do's and don'ts, and just kind of working through that together so that we can help each other. So starting off, preparation is kind of everything when it comes to working with buyers, right? So the first question I have is, when the market is moving this quickly, like, how do you set expectations and focus your search during the buyer consultation? Because a lot of times people don't want to take the time to prepare. They're just like, I see a house, I need to go see it now. So how do you do that? How do you handle that? Stacey, you want to start? Sure.
Yeah, I think I have a conversation with them over the phone because there isn't enough time now to meet in person. So we just have a consultation on the phone and let them know, listen, if you're not ready to act really fast right now, or at least be over asking, and as well as other things, it's probably not a good time for you to buy a house right now. So that when they call, we know, okay, we're going out writing offers with people who are realistic about the market. I know it sounds very blunt, but it's just, time is valuable right now for everyone. So I try to make that very clear in the nicest way possible.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have something else to add to that part?
I am not flexible at all with clients who are not ready to get a pre-approval. I mean, for 15 years in the business, I've always asked them to get pre-approved prior to us starting the search, but I've been a little bit lenient. We can start the search. We're not going to go very far until you get your pre-approval, but if you want to look at a few houses first, we'll do that. Not anymore. There's no leniency. I'm not looking to see a single house. I explained to them why. And same as Stacy, just make sure they understand, like, if you're planning to go 90% of list price, or frankly, even 100% of list price, don't expect to get the house.
And I'll try to talk them out of it. If they told me no power lines, I'm looking really quick, like, this is it, this isn't it.
Me, and that's the thing.
Because there's so many ways to waste your time right now.
Whatever you tell me your non-negotiables are, I'm looking for those non-negotiables,
Yes.
because I'm not wasting time for you or me.
Yes.
Taking you to see something that I already know you're not gonna like.
Correct.
If the bedroom size is 10 by 10 and you have a king size bed, we're not going to see the house
Right.
because your king is not gonna fit.
Well, but I would say that I do a little differently than that. And I do show people things that are their non-negotiables right now, because there's nothing else to show them. So, if you want Solon schools and you want to be on the north side of Solon, and there's nothing on the north side of Solon, I'm going to show them Popham, right?
Like a doctor who says I can't be near power lines because of it. Why are we going to look at this house? It's right there.
I guess it depends on the client. If it's a newer client,
You do some things
if it's a newer client, you might do it in the beginning and then you will change over time.
Right.
Or at least like pointing it out to them when they send it to you and say, why didn't this show up in my search? This was on Zillow, I saw it. And then, well, that only has a 1-car garage and you said that you needed 2.
Yeah.
So is the 1-car garage something you're willing to accept?
That we can make
Or-
adjustments.
Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly the conversation I have,
Yeah.
like, look, there is nothing, I mean, the inventory is so limited. There is nothing that meets all of your, which one, you're gonna have to bet somewhere. You're not gonna get, and maybe you're not getting your forever house, but you need a house now, so what can you accept? Does that mean, a 1-car garage instead of 2? Does that mean a little farther south instead of farther north? Where can you bet? Because you have to.
Yeah, I mean, I do buyer consultations with every single person. Like Rick said, I'm not showing a single person with a without a pre-approval. We get Zillow calls and I'm like, I'm not pre-approved, I'm not going. I don't want to be a jack in the box realtor. The other thing is I kind of work backwards. Because they're pre-approved for X amount, but with interest rates now as high as they are, I talk about, what do you want your month? What is the max your monthly payment can be? That way, when I'm going out, like, I'm calculating already ahead of time what their max payment would be at $10,000 over, et cetera. And if it's already just at list price too high, there's no point in going out. So that's just another thing I do is I talk about because it looks very different in Cuyahoga County versus Summit County because their taxes are very different. So, you might be able to afford a much bigger house in one county versus another. So we talk about that too, as well. I just think that's important because at the end of the day, it comes down to monthly payments for buyers.
Absolutely.
Alicia has a question. She says, would you meet with a buyer to establish rapport before you get their pre-approval?
No.
For a buyer consultation or, I guess.
Oh, for a buyer consultation.
Yeah, a buyer consult, yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
not out to
Yes.
houses, but to
No,
do that.
and
buyer
I
consultation.
And you
Don't-
can do a video.
Yeah.
Could be a Zoom,
Yeah.
to save yourself from driving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't do buyer consultations in person, just as a single female. I just think that's really unsafe. Without a pre-approval especially, I'm like, I don't even, especially with the newest guy going crazy. I just think of every way to protect myself. So, that's Zoom. And if I even get the heebie-jeebies still, I say that
And
our
you'll
brokerage
know.
requires our license to go see houses.
And you don't
So,
know if they're serious or not, because if they're actually doing the steps to get
Yeah.
approval, then you know that they're
Right.
most likely a serious buyer.
right, exactly.
And on the flip side, if you're the listing agent, right now, I think people are just calling me to get into houses. And
Mhm.
I've actually had a conversation with them, very professionally, that we're not looking to just open doors, we're looking to establish a relationship with you.
Mhm.
So if this house doesn't work, we'd like to be able to be your realtor of choice in the future. And that has caused a couple people to just not work with us, especially just recently on a couple of houses we just listed it, and that's okay.
But then
They'll
also,
find someone that will work with them, and that's okay.
and that kind of goes into another point of like buyers cheating on you.
Yeah.
So, which is like our next point.
It is. Great
Um,
segue.
Yeah, so like they are so desperate to call the listing agent thinking maybe that'll get
That'll
me
get them
in.
better and.
So setting that expectation first of why you need a buyer's agent versus a listing agent in the consult is so important. But even more important is I'm getting my buyer loyalty agreement signed, because I don't trust all my buyers, especially in this market. I don't blame them. I really don't. Anything they can do. So that's why I'm getting my buyer loyalty agreement signed before like we even write offers.
Like, I don't even trust my family. So they too.
It's true.
And I'm saying that because one of my clients is like family. And I was showing all these houses, and then they're like, "Oh, we saw this other house the other day." I said, "Who did you see it with?" We just called the agent. I said, "That is not allowed.
Don't do that, yeah.
Don't do that ever again." It was like, "Oh, we didn't know.
Shame.
We didn't know." I was like, "What do you mean you didn't know? We talked about this."
Yes.
So no one is safe. Everyone gets the buyer loyalty agreement.
They didn't know, which is fair because they're not in this business to know that.
But we talked
But-
about it.
Okay, yeah. But also when I'm a listing agent and I get those calls, my first question is, are you working with an agent?
Yes.
Yes.
First question.
Yep.
And they say no usually.
And sometimes they say no,
I've got some
but
yeses.
I've gotten yeses, oh, but she's
I don't
not
like-
available
yeah,
this
that's what
weekend and
they
I
told
need to
us.
see
I
it.
didn't want to bother her.
I don't want to bother her,
I
yeah.
got one.
She's
this
busy,
agent.
so.
And it was an agent from a different
To
company.
get someone on. her
That's
team
what
to
I
show
would
you
say
the
too.
property.
Yeah.
Someone from her brokerage.
That's what they told this agent, and he went so far as to, "Oh, I'll take you to show this house and I'll list your house for you. And let me pull comps." And the comps were like, like not even close to where they live at. Like the comps were like way on the other side. These comps don't even match your house.
Oh my God.
So they were like, "I'll list your house." And I was like, "They're wrong comps for number one."
Oh.
And so it was hard. And I said, "Don't do that again. You're not allowed to talk to him anymore."
So on the topic of buyer loyalty agreements, so Catherine, you're using them, Stacy, you're using them, Janice?
I'm using them for the most part. There are times I'm not using them, but for the
Yeah.
most part.
I have even my own siblings sign up buyer loyalty.
Good.
agreements. Yeah. And I describe it as, it sounds so cheesy, but it's the easiest way to break it down. I send it, I like propose it as like a marriage agreement. We're agreeing not to cheat on each other. These are our agreements, and I agree to all of these. These are my vows to you, like a service agreement. These are my vows to you, and you're agreeing not to cheat on me. And if at whatever point I break any of these vows to you, I'm asking that you have a conversation with me before you go and cheat on me. And at that point, we can't resolve the issue, then we can void this and we can get divorced and it's no longer an issue. That way it's not so scary as like, oh my gosh, I'm bound to
Stuck
this.
with
one.
you,
Yeah, I'm just asking for a conversation before you go out and cheat on me. And then through that conversation, we also talk about what open houses look like let me register you with the agent and that kind of stuff. But that's the way I always describe it. It's like a marriage agreement. You're agreeing not to cheat on me. I'm not gonna cheat on you. I'm gonna do all these things for you and be loyal to you. And I just ask that a conversation happens if you're ever unhappy with me first. And then at that point, you're still unhappy with me, then I will rip this up and we will never have to talk again.
And that should cover a lot of your objections, just the fact that, you're saying, I will let you out of this if you're not happy with me.
At least
Yeah.
tell me what's
I
going
did.
on.
Right.
That's actually really good.
Yeah.
That's a really great script. Thank you for
And I
sharing
like
that.
that. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
if you're
good.
married, if
It's a
you want to
marriage
be
agreement.
married and you
We're
don't want you,
married.
nobody wants to cheat on each other. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I get
I get
that,
It
right?
breaks it down for them outside of it just
Like
seeming like
layman's
you want to
terms.
make money.
Right,
No,
no,
because they don't
exactly.
really understand agency, right?
No.
So it's a
Yeah.
better word.
Right,
For
exactly.
sure.
So I always describe it as like a marriage agreement. So, and then that's less scary. People are like, okay, yeah, I don't want to cheat on you. I don't want to get cheated on. Yeah. like,
Absolutely.
Right.
So what do you say if they ask, if they want to buy a for sale by owner at that point, when they've signed that with you? And like the for sale by owner is not willing to work with you for some reason or another? Like, how do you handle that if that's their objection?
I recently had that, and so, because I called it for sale by owner on my clients' behalf, and they were very, very rude, and they were like, well, if your client wants to buy and you're and use an agent, then I'm not selling to your client. And so I had the conversation with my client, exactly what I was told. And, they were like, well, if they're not gonna allow me to have my agent, then I don't want that house. Because they felt like it was something could go wrong in the process and they had no support. Because at that point they would be on their own. And so she felt like she didn't know enough about the process to do it on her own with that house. And that's why that house has been on Zillow for over 100 days, because every agent probably tries to call him and he won't allow them to see it because they are represented with an agent.
I had one time when my buyer wanted to see it for sale by owner, and I said, well, let me call the owner, let me talk to the owner, because it said no realtors. And I told her that up front that they had said no realtors, but I called him anyway, had a conversation with him, and he said, I'm happy to work with you, but they have to pay for you. And so then I had to, I called my agent, my clients back, and they said they were willing to pay me, but it was a very minimal, like 1.5% or something. And I said that was fine, I would do it. It didn't work out because they didn't end up liking the house. So that's the only situation I've had.
I've
most
sold
recently.
a good chunk of FSBOs to my buyers over the years. And frankly, in the last month, I've sold 2 of them. Because by the time you hit the market, by the time that house hits the market, it's too late. Then you're going to be in multiple offers of, 20 offers on that house. So I've sold a few FSBOs recently and several in the years. And only one time did I have a FSBO tell me they don't want to pay. Actually, I take that back. 2 times, but one time after a conversation that FSBO agreed to pay. And the way I explain it to them, to the seller, is look, at the end of the day, all the money's in the same pot. So if they have to pay me my commission, they're just going to reduce their offer by that percentage. And at the end of the day, your net proceeds will be the same. But it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other for a seller. But it's a big difference for a buyer who has to come out because closing costs are not financeable. So if we can increase our offer to cover that, then they put that in their 30-year mortgage, and it's it's $10 a month or $20 a month. It's a lot easier for the buyer to pay. And at the end of the day, you're making the same net proceeds at the end of it. Only one time did I have one cranky old person tell me that if your client's willing to pay that much more, then I should get that much more. So they still weren't, even after talking about increasing the offer, they wouldn't pay me, and my buyer had the funds to be able to pay me out of closing costs, but yeah, usually it works out with a for sale by owner.
Yes, I mean, I will say, I usually take less commission on a for sale by owner. But that again comes from the buyer loyalty agreement. I put in there, I will take no less than, I know it sounds bad, but I'll take no less than 2% straight. Which ends up working for like the higher priced houses. And then, so if a for sale by owner one time only so I could cover 1%, then my buyer was like, okay, like 1%, I can do that. Like, so we bridged the gap that way. But yeah, I won't take anything less than 2% straight.
I would make an argument that on a for sale by owner, you should take more than the typical, whatever's typical in the MLS.
Oh, I know.
And, you know,
They don't see it that way.
No, they don't see it that way, but
You do,
but
you
you're-
end up
I
doing
do
both
way-
sides of the work.
Way more work on. for
way
sale
more
by
work
owners,
on a
yeah.
FISBO
But I think
because,
sometimes sellers now are not willing to pay it because they know they could just find someone else to buy it.
So I just had one that
That's
closed
mine.
on my birthday, actually. And it was a for sale by owner and I had the buyer, but the for sale by owner, the seller paid me 3%,
Wow,
as
nice.
they should have,
Nice, yeah.
because I ended up doing
You
both
worked
sides.
hard.
Yeah, I did both sides of the coin. I
Nice.
ended up, yeah.
And you worked hard on it.
Yeah, I did. And it
Oh,
was the
yeah.
longest deal ever.
Everything is.
yeah, I mean,
Because
when
I
you
have
get
to
to an
communicate to you, and
ROC,
I have to communicate to you, and then I have to, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So, and then I have to talk to title for both, you know, so
It's a lot.
It was a lot.
and not to mention you have to explain to the seller because,
They don't really
you know,
understand.
if you're representing the seller and I'm talking through an ROC with you, okay, you understand why I'm
Mhm.
asking for mold to be cleaned up, but when they don't have a professional who understands that process, you're sitting there explaining to them why are we asking for these things, or what, you know, what do the comps look like? Why is our offer this instead of that? You know, you just spend a lot more time hand-holding, even though you don't represent that seller, you're still
Mhm.
there hand-holding that seller through
And
the
you still have to
process.
negotiate through it with them and make sure that everybody, you know, is on the same page through all of that.
Yep.
So that kind of leads a little bit into, it feels like in this market sometimes when you're representing a buyer that it's hard to negotiate. Just because you're trying to not negotiate, but even like, you feel like you give up a lot in the initial offer in order to get them the house, right? A lot of times. So what are some strategies you feel have helped set you apart from other offers and helped you win for your client?
I can jump in.
Sure.
I feel like, I just got a buyer property on Sunday at 11 o'clock at night. We finally wrapped it up on Sunday. So, it was probably the most aggressive offer that I've ever written. So we all do, you know, above asking. We were significantly over asking with an escalation. We all do escalations. That's not anything unique.
Apparently it is. I'm talking to some buyers who are leaving their agents. They're like, I've never heard of this in my life. I was like, you never heard of an escalation?
Yeah, so we went way over, you know, our initial offer was way over with an escalation, $100,000 over.
Ooh,
Wow.
wow.
Our initial offer was 80 over list and escalating over to up to 100 over list. With, so that's not necessarily, I mean, maybe the numbers are unique, but the idea of an escalation. Yeah, we did an appraisal gap guarantee, which again, nowadays is pretty common, and we did a pretty large one, a $50,000 gap on that house. But then where I think one of the reasons that we set ourselves apart is when I was writing that offer, I called my inspector and I booked him for Monday. We wrote the offer Saturday, and Monday I had the inspector already booked. So when I presented the offer, I said, if we get this done, inspections are on Monday afternoon. If your sellers will let us in, it's already booked, and we will get inspections done within 24 hours of accepting the offer.
Wow.
Yeah, luckily the inspector was available, and I think the inspector was available because everybody's waiving inspections. So you would think inspectors are busy, but with everybody waiving inspections, he had some time slots open. So that was already, you know, my clients weren't willing to waive inspection. Oh, we also put a clause in there that says if the total sum of the material defects does not exceed $10,000, we will not ask for anything on the ROC. So yes, there's some window problems. Yes, there's, gutter problems. There's there's some electrical things we would normally ask for.
That you knew upfront that you saw.
We didn't know, we found out during inspections, but that total is not going to exceed 10,000. So my buyers are gonna have to take care of it. So those are, I guess, two things that we did a little different, was book the inspector and put that limit on the material latent defects. As long as the repairs don't exceed $10,000, we won't ask for anything.
Good strategies. What
So
else?
what I would say is, so I also use Rick's inspection guarantee. Because that has helped me win in multiples. But I always call the listing agent before I write the offer. And I always ask, is there anything outside of price that is important to your client? Because sometimes price is not their motivator. It could be terms, it could be
Free rent back.
it could be rent back, it could be they need, whatever. It could be whatever the seller wants, right? So I always establish that relationship up front with the seller, with the agent. Just so they know me, they know when my offer comes over, we've had a talk, and then, I always joke with them, like, I know you're getting 1,000 calls, but I wanted to call you and I'm sorry to bother you, I'm sorry to bother you, because I know your phone is blowing off the hook. And then I, present my offer, and I always, so I'm doing the same thing, escalation clauses and appraisal gaps, even though I hate appraisal gaps. I think it's such a terrible thing for a buyer, long term, or short term. But we're doing appraisal gaps, escalation clauses, rent backs if they need it. Look, I will offer anything at this point. And so I have one, well, it's really funny to watch. So the house that you lose out on, to go back and see what it actually closed for. And so, because a couple we lost out on, I know we had the highest appraisal gap. I know we had the highest offer, but we did not win the bid. And then it ended up closing for less than we actually offered. So I'm like, dang, what the heck happened?
Money's not always.
Money is not always the motivator. And so it goes back to money's not always the motivator.
Well, and I think that's true for buyers too. Like some people are willing to put down more cash now in an appraisal gap or whatever it is, just to get the house that they need, and I think it's just all about the individual buyers and what their needs are in that situation and ensuring that they understand what they're doing. So like, how do you all make sure that they understand that? Like, how do you explain putting down all of this extra cash, and doing these escalation clauses?
Do you want a house?
I think
Right.
they have to understand.
Do
that
you want to
they're-
buy a house today or not?
No, I just had this come up when I wrote an offer, and I think they have to understand that if they're putting 20% down and there's an appraisal shortfall, they have the money's there. You're just
They can move it.
allocating it differently.
Definitely.
But some people don't understand the allocation of the funds. So I think that's critical for them to understand.
I've had my, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, but also they need to understand that the house is really worth X.
Yes.
So if you're putting down Y, that money, you may never see back.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have to be willing to lose
Well,
that
and how
money.
long are you going to be in the house?
And
And I
that's
joked
the
to
other
say,
thing.
don't hate us in 5 years.
Yeah.
Right, don't hate me in
us
5
upfront.
years, because I just
Yeah.
had one, and I think our appraisal gap was something like, I think it was like 38,000 or something like that. I know.
No,
I
it's
gave-
awful.
and-
Palpitations.
I know, and I had it when I was writing it. I said, are you sure? And so they were like, yeah. So we won the house, and they just closed last week, and
Did they have to use the
they
gap?
did have to use the gap, because not the total
Okay.
gap, but part of it, and a good chunk of it.
Mhm.
Because the house did not appraise for the offer value. And so they understand, they're like, we're gonna be here, probably for the next 10 years or so. And they, they understand that they're not gonna probably get that back when they go back to sell it, because who knows what the market's gonna look like. in
Well, they
10
might.
years.
I don't know that they
They might.
probably won't. I mean, we
Can I
don't
talk about this
know.
We don't- that's what I said,
information
we don't know.
On getting offers approved with Maximum, because I just had a unique situation that's never occurred for me, and I don't want to call out brokerages, but our famous green and yellow, I've never, ever, ever had such a nice agent to work with on multiple offers. He disclosed to me there were 29 offers. There were cash offers just like ours, and we did what you did with an escalation, we went 100,000 over, but the listing agent was so nice the whole time, and so I sort of took a back seat. I have a hard time not texting and sometimes getting a little obsessive, like, hey, how's it going? I'm still here, but
Right.
not being overly pushy because that can turn people off. And I have to tell you, he disclosed to me that he wrote an offer on the house and it came down to two, ours and his, and they chose ours, and they were both cash offers and they were both, the other one was for more money in cash than ours was with the escalation. So we didn't hit our escalation. They didn't take it, even though they had another offer that would have kicked our escalation in with his offer. And I can't figure out why. He still hasn't really told me why they chose our offer, besides that they really felt for these people, not being able to find a house or whatnot. And that's why they chose it. But I just wanted to kind of give a message out there that there is hope sometimes when you think like, okay, we're never getting this. With just from what he told me, I would have never known he wrote an offer until he told me. But I'm just sharing that because I think we get really burnt out and frustrated, and it's not just about the money, it's how you present yourself, how you treat the listing agent. That's a big one. He said he had sharks calling in and, you know, really using foul language with him, threatening to call his broker, and he was doing all the right things. But he said these people are just sharks. So I think it just goes back to like how you treat people too.
Yeah, I made a Facebook post about that. The agents are really mean right now.
It's really
Yes.
important to have good relationships
Absolutely.
with our co-brokes. Whether they're in our brokerage, whether they're at anywhere else, it doesn't matter. It's important to have good relationships. And that offer that I just mentioned a minute ago, I called that agent, 9 o'clock at night. We didn't get the deal done till 11. At 9 o'clock, I called her. I said, "Are you sick of hearing from me yet?" And she goes, "Oh, no, Rick, you're great." Then she tells me about this other agent. There was a problem with the disclosures. She kept on sending out disclosures that were signed, but blank, but it was a dot loop issue. It was like something, it was a tech problem with dot loop, and she kept on resending the disclosures and they were not filled out, but they were signed. And she said, "Rick, you're great to work with. This other agent keeps on calling me and getting so mad at me that I'm sending out the bad disclosures. I'm trying to get it resolved." And she's like, "It just makes me think this is not the agent I want to work with on the deal." Which I get, like, if you're
And they
getting,
can influence their sellers, trust me. Like,
Sure.
this one's gonna be smooth and easy and this one's.
Oh, yeah.
so it's really important to have a good relationship.
It's the
Yeah.
truth, though.
Yeah.
And I just, as the broker, I feel like while we're talking about all this appraisal gap stuff, I feel like I have to, well, a couple things about that. Number one is, in terms of explaining it, this isn't the broker part, but in terms of explaining it, I mean, I get on the phone conference call with me and the lender and the buyer, and I have the lender explain it, because when you're putting 40% down or 30% down, it's not going to change how much money you're actually bringing to the closing, depending on the price point. As long as you're staying above 20% equity, a lot of times it's not really affecting the economics of the deal. Your payment might go up slightly because of it, but it's not changing. You don't necessarily, my clients, if our appraisal falls $50,000 short, they're not bringing an extra $50,000 to the table.
Correct.
Because they're putting 40% down. So instead of 40% down, it's going to affect their payment slightly, but it's not going to affect their cash out of pocket at closing. So I think that's a good way to explain, have your lender get on the phone and help them understand, what does their payment look like and what does their cash out of pocket. And sometimes it's a lot easier to hear it from your lender than it is from your realtor.
I do a spreadsheet of what it looks like for this scenario, and if an appraisal gap is needed, this scenario, and then we Zoom call and I screen share so they can see exactly where the money is moving, how it's moving. And that way it's just like very black and white, because some people are visual people and they need to like see that dollar amount.
And then the broker side of me tells me, normally I think in a normal market, when it comes time for an appraisal, if we feel the need to meet an appraiser, it's usually the listing agent. Would you guys agree? It's usually the listing agent's job to meet the appraiser out there. Not anymore. I mean, if our clients, I'm meeting the appraiser tonight at that same property. If I left it to the listing agent, they only care that it appraises for $50,000 less than that's all she cares about. I mean, as long as it's within that $50,000 gap, she's happy, because we got to buy the house. I've got more of an interest in seeing that it appraises for the purchase price or as close to that purchase price as we could possibly get it. If it's $50,000 short, that listing agent doesn't care. So I'm gonna be there with the appraiser this evening with a list of updates, with a list of comps that I want them to see. Whether they'll look at it or not is up to the appraiser, but
Right.
I'm doing whatever I can to make sure that we get that appraisal $50,000 higher than she cares about.
Yeah.
For sure.
I always close it.
I see Alicia asked, what do you do if the listing agent straight up asks you what the offer will be when you call before the offer? Like just asks you to give a verbal.
Tell them.
I
Yeah.
tell them because look, if it's not gonna work,
I'm always
save my time from
Yeah.
writing all the paperwork, and
For
save my
sure.
client's time
Yeah.
from stressing over, do they
If we're
get
so
it?
far out of the ballpark.
If we're so
let
far
us
in the
know.
ballpark, let's have a
Because
conversation.
if they know the seller's bottom line and you're not gonna be close, then.
Then, yeah.
I especially call, I know it's horrible, for my FHA and my VA buyers.
Yeah.
I just don't, it's like so discouraging for my VA buyers. But I don't want to write a bunch of offers, get their hopes up for a bunch of things when I know that the sellers are leaning towards conventional or cash, or they have a cash offer in hand.
Yeah.
My VA buyers don't stand a chance, unfortunately,
Keep
so.
hope, because Michael just wrote an offer, he's written,
I-
I think, 20 offers for his
I
buyers.
so
And he just got accepted yesterday with the VA because the seller's a veteran.
I
And he
know,
chose it, but it's rare.
I know, it's so hard, I know,
It's
and,
hard.
and especially when they have no cash, I'm like, oh
Yes,
my
that's,
God.
that's fun, yeah.
So I'm just keeping hope, but I don't want
It's
to
tough,
waste people's time.
Yeah.
either.
Catherine, you're the queen of the segue today, because FHA is kind of our next topic, FHA and DA. So as you were talking about, sometimes sellers have preconceived notions or listing agents have preconceived
Mhm.
notions about what an FHA or VA deal is going to entail, what the appraisal is going to be like. So have you had any success, like you were just talking about, it worked out because for a VA loan, because the seller was a veteran as well. So like what other strategies can we use? Because we want to help these FHA and VA buyers. Like how can we help them? I know it's kind of tough out there right now. So like
Yeah.
what if any success are all of you having with that?
So I just had, one of my listings just accepted an FHA buyer, which they were the only FHA buyer out of 10 conventional buyers. And, we had they know the difference between between the financing types, but they also know, and it's been in the media, that FHA and VAs are having a harder time of finding a home. And so they elected to accept the FHA buyer because of that
Nice.
reason.
They're just kind
So it
people.
wasn't, so in that instance, it wasn't price because they weren't the highest.
Oh my gosh, bless them.
It wasn't price.
That's so violent.
I
Actually
know.
kind of chill out.
I know, I was so, I felt so.
That's so nice.
But it wasn't, but for my buyers who are having a hard time, like, to be honest, right now, what I tell them is let's look at houses that are back on the market or that have been sitting for a little bit, right? Because they
And
may be,
unfortunately, looking under their price.
and
If
look
there are
at under.
pre-approvals here, we can't look here.
And I have one that always wants to look at her max. I'm like,
I
sweetie, you
know.
have no wiggle room.
Yeah.
So I need you
We're
to
not
look,
gonna be able to get.
we're
it
not
done.
gonna be able to get
You
it
see
done. So-
$20,000 under max.
So
Yeah.
that's been my strategy, and it worked. Like I just got one under contract last week, and because we looked at a house that had been on the market for a long bit, really. And when I went to see it, I was like, I don't even know why it's still sitting here. Like it's on the main street, but they didn't care.
Right.
And
Well, that's
so
different for everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Some people care if it's on a
some
main
people
street,
care,
some
some people
don't.
don't, and it's like a really busy street too. And I was like, okay. And they have little kids, but they still loved it. And I was like, okay. And then
They play in the backyard.
we were the only offer, and we got it accepted, and we at list price, like we didn't go over. You know what I mean? And so, because we didn't have any competition at that point, and
So they were willing to accept.
they were
full
willing
price.
to accept full price. And so, yeah, so I think they're looking at different ways, like looking at things that have been on the market for a little bit longer, looking at things that are back on the market. As long as it doesn't say back on the market for inspection reasons, because that could be a great, or if they already have their inspection report Great. Send that inspection report to your buyer and say, these are the things that we know up front. Do you still want to move forward? And then they still might, you never know, they still might be okay with it.
Yeah.
Has anyone here written an offer where instead of just covering the appraisal gap, you're covering the seller's closing costs?
Well, I do
I just received that and it was very attractive.
Yeah,
for the seller.
we've been doing it for
I've done
about a year now, because it doesn't go into the appraisal.
Right.
The other thing that I've been doing for FHA and VA buyers is if they have even like a little bit of cash, if there ends up being repairs that are needed, we ask for a receipt of how much it would cost, and then we will give X amount of dollars to seller's closing costs. So
For
say
the seller to do the
for
repairs.
the seller to do the repair, so they aren't losing money,
Right.
you know.
But we can't do the repairs.
We
so-
can't do the repairs, but I'm compensating, and it doesn't have to go into the appraisal.
Mm.
So, for a handrail, I know it's not gonna be that much money. So we ask for a receipt of what it would be, and then the buyer would pay X amount towards seller's closing costs, commissions, et cetera. Just to cover that amount to help get that accepted.
So I'm really curious about that though, because I've never done that. And I'm curious, Stacy, why you said it's really attractive, because in my mind, when I represent a buyer, I'm thinking, if I am paying $5,000 of seller's closing costs, you're coming out of pocket $5,000 no matter what. Whereas if I increase the offer and have an appraisal gap,
Mhm.
maybe I don't have to come out of pocket. So, and from the seller, and from a seller's perspective, I would think it's, again, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you get it in purchase price, or you're getting in closing costs credit, so.
These buyers offered 20,000 over, they gave a $10,000 gap and they gave 5,000 towards closing, but 5,000 closing is guaranteed.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if it appraises,
So
They
for
still
the
get
seller,
5,000.
it's attractive.
it's attractive for a seller. A
Yeah.
buyer,
That's what
I
you're
don't know
trying
what the benefit would be for a
Well,
buyer,
I'm-
besides you're just trying to be
Just
attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for a seller, it's like automatic money they get.
But what if the offer was $5,000 more? Isn't it the same offer if you're offering $5,000 more, if you're off, from a seller's
think
perspective? From a buyer's
appraisals-
perspective, it's different. But-
Appraisals in general with sellers, I think, is always an uneasy time. So if my sellers see guaranteed money, no matter what, okay, then.
And I
feel
explain, no
confident.
matter what, like, let's just say if we appraise 10,000 under, you're so good, you're covered up to 10. Might as well say 15 with the $5,000 closing
Mhm.
costs. They're covered for at least 15, but the seller's closing costs were like, oh, they'll pay our title. It was attractive to them.
Mhm.
I mean, there was already a gap in an over.
Maybe it's just a psychological thing in their
It could
I
head.
be.
think it
Yes.
really is. The word
Yeah.
appraisal is scary.
Yeah, the appraisals thing.
Like, we
Because
don't
I've had
like the
quite
word
a few
appraisal.
not happen, so.
We're having, I mean, everybody's
Having a
having them
problem.
not appraising. And I always explain to my buyers too, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards to the appraisals. I know we've kind of moved on from that. But I always explain to them too that the appraisal, the appraiser is looking in a rear view mirror.
That's right.
And, this appraisal that I'm meeting tonight, there's 5 houses that are pending that I'm sure will help us, but they won't use it because they're still pending.
Mhm.
But if you buy the house in a month from now, we would have those 5 houses closed and we would use it. So,
Correct.
when you're looking in a rear view mirror, it doesn't mean that you've lost that money. And then-
Some appraisers are great and they actually adjust the value for the market. I've seen that like recently, that there's like an adjustment like
Yes.
for the market for this time.
Yeah,
Which
if they know that I've had, on the listing side, I've had appraisers ask me, were you in multiple offers, like things like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think it just is personal, again,
Yeah.
for each appraisal.
Yeah, some
It
appraisers are
is.
better than
That's
others.
So.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what if your buyer sees a listing in the MLS that they like and the approved financing does not say FHA? Do you call?
Yeah,
I do,
Me too.
I do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just that they didn't check the box.
because it's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes, they're like, well, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
And then, like.
Sometimes if they're not comfortable with FHA,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean your seller shouldn't keep
Right.
it.
Because
Yeah.
I want to hear them say there's an issue
Yeah,
there's
that I
there's
know it's not
shipping
going
pain,
Shipping
to.
pain.
Yeah,
Right.
I know that there's a major safety issue that's not going to be
Right.
FHA approved.
Yeah.
So when you run into those issues that are not FHA acceptable on an appraisal, like actual material things with the property, how do you handle that? Catherine, I loved what you said about attributing the cost to the seller's closing costs at that point.
With the
to-
receipt.
Yeah, with the receipt, with the receipt, of course. I love that. Are there any other strategies for that moving forward? Obviously, we can't do it as buyer's agents. We're not paying for that. I see the broker over there looking at me, making sure that we don't do that. And the buyer shouldn't pay for it either because they don't even own the property. So what else can we do in that case?
It depends on the buyer's comfort level. I mean, in all honesty, I don't do a lot of, I couldn't tell you the last FHA or VA deal I've done. But if if there's peeling paint and the seller says, no, I could go sell it to somebody else who's gonna take it with the peeling paint. I'll tell my buyer, you can go paint their house and hope that it closes. And if it doesn't, just understand that you just improved somebody else's property.
Oh my gosh, that sounds
I
like
will
such a
say-
liability.
I will say,
Yeah, I was thinking we.
full
could just bring them
disclosure, my client did go paint one time. Because we were like, but it wasn't FHA, it was the dang on city that wanted it painted, and we were like days away, like everything was like ready to close.
I
And
also
the
heard-
city was like, we're not signing off on this until this paint is done upstairs. And
Hmm.
so the seller wasn't even, it was an investor who was selling the property. They were like, we don't care. So me and my client went over and painted a wall.
What if they damage the house somehow and then they get sued and you get sued? Oh my gosh, that makes me so nervous. Like,
Well, they're in the house, so.
I know, but what if I don't know.
Painting, I
but what
wouldn't
if
do anything outside of painting.
But what if the paint is like bad and it starts like degrading the wall? Like, you just think of the worst case
Oh my
scenario. Or it's the wrong type of paint and it doesn't adhere right, and then it makes it worse and it starts peeling off. Like, oh my gosh, it makes me so nervous.
I've also heard certain lenders, I have an FHA right now, and they told me that if it was on the exterior of the property and it came up on appraisal, that it was possible that they might be able to escrow money from the buyer to take care of it after closing, and FHA would accept that. So that's something to check with
For
the lender
outside?
about.
For right now,
Exterior only.
he told me that it was only
Weather-
weather
Yeah,
related. is
yeah.
what- Like if it's in the pretty of the
Well,
summer.
Weather related, but I think what the key part of what Katie just said is that the buyer's money is in escrow, not seller's money in escrow.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Which some buyers might be okay with that.
Yeah.
But at least it can close.
Mhm.
You have to go paint the house.
This is
Look, I
awesome
supervised, I
discussion.
actually did not pick up a paint.
You're like, I'm just here.
I was just there for support and to open the door.
That looks really nice.
So we are coming near the end. We have about 14 more minutes. So I want to make sure that we touch on protecting your client and yourself in this market. So Mr. Broker over here, there's been a lot of discussion about love letters, whether or not it's okay to submit offers with love letters. NAR says absolutely no, don't do it. So, I mean, Rick is like, don't.
Yeah, no, so I guess my feeling on love letters is different than our previous broker, where I'm a little bit more lenient on it for buyers. I mean, I tell my buyers, be careful. First of all, you don't know the seller's feeling about family or what, I mean, religion or whatever it might be, that they might choose to discriminate against your offer because they figured something out from your letter.
Yeah.
But I also see the value. I mean, I've worked with sellers. I know that they, when they've lived there, when they've raised their family there, they feel emotional about their house. It's not just a business transaction. And so I know it helps with the buyer. So I usually tell the buyers, if you want to write it carefully. When I represent a seller, I always recommend don't accept it, because it's not always about, I've had buyers or sellers who have accepted offers that were not the highest offer. And the highest offer may have been somebody in a protected class, which had nothing to do with why they chose a lower offer. But it's about perception. So if that person in the protected class perceives the reason why they weren't, their offer wasn't accepted, that's all it takes to have a problem, is somebody's perception. So I tell them always, be careful. If you want to see that, I recommend don't look at it as a seller. With a buyer, I'll kind of cautiously tell them to proceed cautiously with it. Are we just talking local?
I've had
laws,
a
or we
few
going to other
lately,
points?
I've had a few lately where the listing agent has put in the broker's remarks, no letters.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I respect that, and the buyer says, well, I'm supposed to write a letter, I think I should write a letter, and like, they're not accepting them, it's gonna be more negative and not even looked
Yeah.
at, and maybe it'll change the perception of even our offer if we send it.
Mm.
But
So
I'm
I
not
don't
sending it.
even talk about love letters with my
Right.
buyers, but
They all hear it.
you know, because I have a client now, she's like, well, before when I got my house, I wrote a love letter, I want to write a letter. I said, technically, we're not supposed to do that, but if you send it to me, I have to submit.
Right,
Mhm.
That was my point to her.
that's literally all I
And
just
that's what I
forwarded
said.
on. Now, for my sellers, I say, no love letters with, especially with photos, I just.
Yeah.
And so with photos come in, I put a big white text box over it, if any offer comes in to block it out, like, I'm not doing that, so.
Well, and I've also heard, just like with MLS descriptions, property, not people. So if you're talking about something you really love about the property, like, oh, we love the location, we love
The
the
hardwood
woodwork,
floor.
right? Things like that, I've had that before, and that's what I try to recommend to my clients.
And remember, I mean, I always talks about, like, talk about the dog, like, the
Yeah.
dog will have so much fun, like, don't, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Dogs
So-
aren't protected class.
Then we also have big ones that have been happening in our market, waiving inspections and waiving appraisal. So like, how do we protect ourselves when our clients really want to do that?
Do you mind if I jump in first?
I would love for you to do that.
Um, So I always tell my clients, if you're gonna waive an inspection, of course, it's gonna make it more attractive to a seller. However, I am not recommending that you do that because you don't know what you're getting if you don't do an inspection. And I'll go so far as to say, if you choose not to do an inspection, I want you to put in writing against my agent's wish, or against my realtor's recommendation, I am choosing not to do a home inspection. And I will stick that in my .loop file and hang on to it, because I promise you, in 3 years and 5 years, we are gonna see a lot of realtors getting sued for advising their clients not to do a home inspection, and then they find out that their foundation is crumbling or whatever it
I have
is.
a question about that. Does the for your protection get a home inspection when they check, I will not do this, and then they send it, does that not?
Well, that's part of the discussion that Katie and I had when we decided to make that
Yeah,
mandatory. And I know not all the agents like having more mandatory forms that they have to
But
get
it is
signed, but
protecting
Does that
you.
not
But-
cover
But it
this?
is protection.
But,
Yeah.
and it's an FHA form, and and we've
It is?
decided, well,
I use it
technically it's an
I do too.
FHA
I
form,
use it
but
for
we've
everyone.
decided to make it mandatory for cash and conventional and everything. And it's because it it says that same thing that I just, when I make them put in writing that
Okay.
against my realtor's recommendation, it's kind of the same thing.
okay.
But yeah, if, be very careful. There will be lawsuits in a few years from now with people finding all these problems in their houses, and it's gonna be the realtor's fault because the realtor told me not to do a home inspection.
Yeah.
So just be careful.
I do the same thing. you
I
do.
would
I'm
say
just
I
saying,
haven't had
it will
one.
make your offer stronger, but I'm not recommending you do
I
it.
have not had one waived yet.
Me either,
I don't.
because I don't let,
I kind of don't either.
there's other ways to work around it. You know, for informational purposes only, for, I won't ask for anything unless it exceeds X amount of dollars. I will only ask for things that are deemed health, safety, hazard, or structural. There's so many workarounds that you can still
You
have
can
your
put a dollar
inspection.
amount in, I've done that.
Yeah.
Yeah. After I
But
started
I have some
using
buyers who just
that,
like, nope,
I
I waive
don't
inspection.
touch it.
And that's
Or
their
even
choice.
just doing it like as a pass fail, like I
Yeah.
either agree to accept the property or.
Yeah, for informational purposes
Yeah.
only, yeah. And I explained that to the, when I do submit an offer like that to the listing agent, I'm like, I know you might have some waived inspections, but I really think it's important that we have inspections to protect your seller and my client as well, because, down the line, if we have a waived inspection, they could come back and sue the seller and say, you didn't tell me that there was
Right.
foundation
They're
issues.
gonna sue everybody.
Right.
They're gonna
Everybody's
sue,
gonna be named.
they're
in
gonna
that.
sue their broker, they're gonna sue the seller, they're gonna sue the inspector. Oh, there's no inspector, I guess, but they're gonna sue the listing side.
Yeah,
Everybody.
Everybody's gonna get named in that lawsuit, and it's gonna be ugly in a few years. Mark, let's save this recording, I promise.
my word.
I hope there's nobody here at this brokerage.
That's why I get my form signed.
Mhm.
Any more thoughts on
I
protecting
feel
your
guilty.
client?
I did a lot of deals like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was just thirsty. Like my customer is more thirsty than I was. You know, they wanted to get the house, and like like I said, it's real competitive out there. So they was waiving the inspection. So they
Yeah.
can get the house.
Well, now you know some alternatives and now you know you have to get that form signed.
And if they want, I mean, look, at the end of the day, we have to do what our client, follow our client's legal
Yeah,
instructions.
right.
If they're saying write the
Well, we
offer
have
with
to
no
have something.
inspections and write the offer with no inspections, just make sure you protect yourself.
yeah,
Right.
And make sure that they're,
Get something
Yeah.
in writing.
yeah,
that they 100% understand and acknowledge that they understand what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, along with that, in terms of final thoughts, like this market is difficult mentally, emotionally for clients, for us, like how do you protect your clients from that side of it instead of just like the transactional side? And how do you protect yourself? And I want to hear it from everybody about that one.
I mean, I'll go first. I always tell, for the buyers, I always tell success stories. My last client wrote 12 offers. They're now in a home that they love. They're so happy, it's worth keeping the course. I also talk about how interest rates are going up, so maybe we don't want to wait until fall. And then for me, I don't know, I cry, so I'm not a good answer on how I protect myself.
Crying is important.
I get so exhausted.
and I
sometimes.
drink, so. hey.
Hey, I mean,
Healthy coping, all of us.
Right.
That is, I'm in between, somewhere in the middle, there's a happy medium.
crying
For
while drinking.
for my buyers, I just tell them up front, like, it's gonna be a journey, and it's not, how it goes, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, or however that goes.
Yeah.
And it's gonna take, it's like,
We're gonna lose them.
we're gonna lose some, but in the end, the house is meant for you, is for you. And that's the way God intended it. So the house that He meant for you to have is the house that you're gonna have. So we're gonna miss some along the journey, but at the end, you're gonna get there. And as for me, I drink, but I also
Not
take,
while you work though.
not while I work,
No,
no,
never.
never.
We don't do that.
Right, we're not looking no, I don't, but no, I also just take time out, sometimes because I have worked like 7 days a week, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And you get close to like that burnout, like, I don't want to see another house.
together.
They do, they be like, I don't want to see another house, I don't want to take a phone call, I don't want to do anything, and so you have to take time for yourself. I like where, y'all know I love James Shaw. I think I have a girl crush on him, but so because he's so smart, but he's so brilliant. And so they do like a 1-3-5 or 3-5-7, 1-3-5, something like that. Where for the first week you take a day off, and then after some weeks you take 3 days off, and then after that you take 5 days off, so that you're not burnt out. And so I haven't totally adopted to that model yet, but I am at least taking 1 day to myself.
Yeah.
Because you have to, and you have to make that, whatever that day is, make it non-negotiable. I try to do Sundays as my non-negotiable, like I won't go on a Sunday, but occasionally there is that house that pops up in your buyer's like, I think this is the one. And then I give
Of
in,
course
and
it
then
is.
we go, and then they're like, I don't like it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
Why did I do that?
My
did I do
Disney
this?
World trips are right now.
Yeah.
I was
yeah.
Like,
So-
I think, yeah, I agree. The whole getting burnt out for buyers, I don't know. I just try to keep them encouraged that it's going to happen. I know it doesn't feel like it, but trust me, we've written sometimes 20 offers for someone and we find it. So it's kind of just same thing. And then for me, for keeping myself from getting burnt out, I don't know that I am keeping myself from getting burnt out, but cool. But vacationing is sort of my outlet.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen enough, but at least several times a year, I have to just break away. And I'm still working when I'm
Yeah.
there, so
Me
it's really not unplugging, but it's a different view. I don't know.
Right.
It's just a
It
different-
feels different.
Yeah.
It feels different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
Writing offers in line at Disney World feels really
Yeah,
different.
walking on the beach, I'm like, I can do this.
Yeah.
Fun is a small world, yeah.
So I just came back from vacation. I think vacations are really important too. And in this market, you can't, I don't know, maybe you can, you said you've got some strategies to totally unplug. I haven't figured that out yet in my own business.
Not totally.
And especially not in this market, I haven't figured that out. And my clients sometimes feel bad. I know, Rick, you're on vacation, but I get it, like, there's nothing else to write, this is the house, we gotta move, we gotta do it, and,
And I used to feel guilty about leaving, but I'm like, I have to go with my family and.
Yeah. So,
I have to.
I think
And you can have coverage, yeah.
Yeah.
that's the thing that I
Utilize that.
am starting to accept more, is that, I mean, I called on you a bunch while I was on vacation 2 weeks ago. I called on some other agents in the office when I was on vacation a few weeks ago. Katie, you helped me on a couple final walkthroughs, and that's it. I mean, and it costs you a few bucks,
Yeah, bring
and
to ourselves, right?
and it's just, I looked at it, and before this market got crazy, I would have just said, you gotta wait till I'm home, sorry. Now,
There's no wait.
it cost me a few $100 how many times I called everybody to help me show houses, do final walkthroughs, whatever. I wrote my own offers, but it was just cost of going on vacation. It was just like, I took my family out to dinner on vacation. I had to pay some agents to do some, to help me out while I was on vacation. It's just the cost of.
And I've learned, Michael, my husband, by the way, who's taught me a lot through this, that I am one of those people that I want to help everybody and I don't want to say no, and I just want to keep going. And I don't like to tell people I'm going out of town because I feel like they're going to be upset, they're going to move on, they're going to cheat on me. And my husband's always like, you have to set the tone, at least a week before. And if you set the tone, there's no surprises and people know, like, you're being upfront with them. We won't be able to help you, but we'll have someone great on our team that can show you houses for us. And I'm like one of those last minute, I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm just being honest. Because I have so many things going on in my mind that I'm not thinking about it. But he set the tone really nice so that his clients waited until he got back. Really, nothing came on the market. So it worked out, but different strategies for different people.
And the other thing is I set hours. I don't know if y'all do, but I do. I am a 9 to 7:30-er, and I will not answer you if you text me, unless it's an emergency, but there's no real emergencies in real estate. If you text me earlier than that, I'm just not gonna respond. Simple as that. I mean, I will write offers later at night and do that kind of stuff. But if you're texting me like, hey, can I go see this house tomorrow? I can respond to you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I don't need to respond to you at 10 o'clock at night. That's not acceptable time to text me. The other thing is my life is generally just one big appointment. If I am with my boyfriend, I say, oh, I'm in an appointment. If I am at the spa, I'm in an appointment. If I am at the grocery store, that's an appointment. I mean, my life is just one big appointment, but I find buyers tend to respect, oh, I'm in appointments, and it makes you seem like you're really busy.
Versus I'm at my son's.
Right, right.
Yeah, I just had a friend who just told her client like everything, and I was like, why did you do that?
No, you're in an appointment.
Like, no, everything's an appointment. I gotta go to my son's, whatever, I'm in an
Track
appointment.
me as an appointment.
Track me.
Yeah, it's on my calendar, it's an appointment.
It's right, everything's an
The
appointment.
flip side of that, though, is I think people, especially now more than 2 years ago, really appreciate family time and value that too. So I think if you
I
say,
don't know about this one.
It depends on the person though, it depends on.
It depends on the
my
person.
level.
yeah, I
If
think it
it's
depends
somebody
on the
that I really
person.
know, if it's somebody that I really know, we have a relationship and I've known them
Or
for some
someone in your
time.
circle that you're
Or
on.
someone
the
in my
track team
circle,
with,
yeah.
they know.
They know, like, close family, friends or whatever, I'd be like, I gotta take my son here and they'll understand. But if it's a stranger, no, I'm in an
An
appointment.
appointment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boundaries.
because people respect that
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
I
because
think,
they don't care. if
And I
they
talk
take your
about
kid
boundaries, but I'm not good at
anywhere.
putting
Right.
them in place, so put boundaries and limits in place.
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah, and the conversation you have around your hours is, would you show up at your doctor's office at 10 o'clock at night and expect them to be open and taking you into, no, you wouldn't. Would you expect the grocery store that hours is, 9 to 10? Would you show up at 11 o'clock and be like, why aren't they open? No, you wouldn't. So the same thing with me. These are my hours. If I don't respond,
Do you tell your clients that up? front?
Yeah, it's in the buyer consult.
Well, you're honest with them, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I say every so often, if you might get a response from me, if we're writing an offer or something like that at night. I said, but if you're asking me to see a house, you'll get a response from me the next morning.
So I also recently discovered do not disturb on my
I
iPhone.
love
It's
that.
great.
I
I've
just,
always had it.
I mean, yeah, it's always been there. I've known about it, but I never used it until 2-3 weeks ago. I was like, oh, this is really, really nice.
get a lot of work done.
Yeah. Yeah, you get a lot of work done. I mean, it's been on Do Not Disturb now, and now they open it up. I see I've gotten 4 text messages, which is better than having it buzz, for 4 messages and 8 emails and 6 phone calls that I missed. The other thing that I think makes me feel good, my wife just texted me a couple days ago, a message she got from one of my clients on Facebook. Which here it is. Yeah. Allison, I can't believe Rick did this for us. We are so forever grateful. I can't wait to see you and get our families together. Thank you for letting him spend so much time with us, even while on vacation. I know it's not easy and must be frustrating. And then something about my son and whatever. But that I got that screenshot from my wife that my client sent to my wife saying, I know it's not easy when you're on vacation and Rick's, I was up from 5 to 11 at night that I was on vacation the whole day, but 5 o'clock, right before dinner, of course, things started getting crazy until 11 o'clock and it was vacation. And then to see that they really appreciate that.
Yeah,
um,
they do. They
That
do.
makes, to me, that makes it worthwhile,
Some
right?
people don't.
Yeah.
They do not care. So when you get someone like that. it's
Yeah.
really- That's awesome.
I always post on my social media if I'm writing
So how do
something
you-
crazy.
How do you handle, I know you have your business hours and you set them up front, and typically I just don't answer after 8 o'clock, but when it's family or someone close to you who would normally call after 8 o'clock, who would call you?
Oh, I ignore
anytime?
my friends too, so.
You ignore them too?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
Oh, God.
Unless it's an emergency.
Well, how do you know if you don't answer the phone?
It's next to me, it's on silent. I read it.
No, I'm saying they call.
If they call, I see that they're calling. If it's important enough, they'll leave me a voicemail.
She's a different generation. They don't call.
I know,
they text.
she said.
That's true.
They'll leave a voicemail if it's important enough for a follow-up on a text message.
yeah.
But, I mean,
Y'all are of a different generation.
I protect my time with my partner. That is very important to me. I only have X amount of days and sometimes I'm there with him writing offers and I'm not really there with him. And that's not what I don't want that.
Yeah.
So especially at night, you do not need to be calling me at night or texting me at night. You can wait. I have clients now that are my friends. I don't answer them. I had a friend who texted me at 11 o'clock last night and she's like, can you do a home evaluation versus, if it's worth adding a bathroom? I didn't respond to her until today. Simple as that.
Somebody said to me, the only emergency in real estate is your house is on fire.
Yes.
And then you need to call the fire department, not your realtor.
Or there's a gas leak, call the gas company.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah.
but they do call us for those things that
They
you're
do.
like I can't fix your hot water tank, but I will get you in touch with someone who can.
Yeah, but
You can just call them.
them texting me at 10 o'clock at night about their hot water tank, no one's coming out at 10 o'clock at night, so it can wait till the morning.
This has been awesome, and I do think we have to cut it off because we're a little bit late here. I know coaching needs to use the Zoom account, but thank you so much to all of you.
Yes.
It's been awesome discussion.
Great panelists.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone online.
Are you enjoying that?
Bye.